All right, so this is, I gave this presentation at iTech, which is where Aaron, I don't even know if you were in the room, but you have seen the work, and it sounds like he's been sharing it. So like he said, my name is Jenahlee Chamberlain. I am a K-6 teacher librarian in the Iowa City School District. I've been a librarian in the district for 14 years. And then this year I kind of transitioned into the other half of my role being what we call an IDS of innovation, which is essentially an innovation coach. So half my job is working with teachers, and then the other half of my job is being a librarian. And this year I shifted into the online program. So Iowa City maintained an online face-to-face program after COVID. It's K-12 currently, and I see students once a week, like I would in the regular school setting for library, which is considered a special. And we see kids for about 25 to 30 minutes a week. I see them for 30, but if in person, it's 27 minutes. I'm sure you guys are familiar with how that works with those fun times of classes. So my information's there if you need to find me on Twitter, Instagram, or that's my school email. So feel free to reach out to me on there, any of those platforms. Okay, so computer science, my background. I'm not certified in computer science. I don't have an endorsement of any kind, like most of us, I would say. My journey with computer science started back when I was working at a school in Iowa City called Kirkwood Elementary. I don't know what the current demographic is, but at that point in time, it was around 75 to 80% free and reduced lunch. So I had a lot of high poverty students, and I stumbled upon Hour of Code and thought, oh, this looks fun. Let's try that out. So in my super sweet, giant, those big colored, like full-size Mac computer lab that we had at the time, that's kind of where we started. And it just started as kind of a, let's do some Hour of Code activities. And then from there, just kind of started to build year after year. So eventually I realized that they had courses on Codeorg. So then I was setting my kids up in courses and having them kind of work through those. And then it's just kind of evolved from there. So if you fast forward to 2020, my district tasked, there was a group of teachers in all different areas that were tasked with creating basically the online curriculum. So not knowing what school was going to look like, everyone was creating lessons for an online format that would be used by everyone. And this was very different for our district because while we all use a similar curriculum, especially in like math and reading and the core subjects, how you taught it and the pacing could always vary. Library we don't have a set curriculum. We do have standards that we teach, but how we teach them and when we teach them has been kind of up to the librarian. So myself, along with another librarian, we're tasked with creating the elementary online curriculum. And we decided to include coding because most librarians were teaching it at that point in some way, whether it was just through Hour of Code activities or through some different things that they had come up with. So that kind of started my district and the teacher librarians all teaching computer science at the same time in pretty much the same way. And so I took that curriculum and have kind of continued to update it and add to it. I redesigned it. Graphic design is another passion of mine. So you'll notice everything is very color coded and branded, if you will. So I just kind of recently moved everything into these new slides. So yeah, so that's kind of how we got here. And then I threw some digging deep, I guess, and having a conversation with another innovation coach, I decided to share this because it's been kind of like my baby, I guess. You get kind of possessive of your work when you put so much work into it. But I kind of figured why just share it with my people in my district when it could help a lot of people who are trying to work through this computer science journey and might need somewhere to start. So that brings us to now. And when I was creating those lessons, this was kind of my thought process. So what am I or what are we as librarians already doing? What was missing? At that point in time, I had really never looked at the CSTA standards. It wasn't even until after that that there was really the big, like I wasn't familiar with this big push from the state to incorporate these standards. So it just kind of, those have been, we've kind of gone back to those. I wanted to make it somewhat progressive so that as they worked through their different grade levels, that it kind of, you know, added on top of each other's, on top of each other. I wanted to add real world connections if I could. One thing that's not on here is I do try to incorporate literature. Being a librarian, that's a great way to tie in. And the number one thing that was important to me was making sure that these resources were available to everybody. So even within my district, not every school has the same resources. So we don't all have the same. Some people might have Spheros, some people might have Bbot, some people might have different physical computing and coding devices, but not everybody did. So I wanted to make sure that everything that I was sharing could be done in every building. So what you will see is there is kind of that I would say physical computing is a missing link, and I'll get to that at the end. But and you'll see I've added in some things to help you adapt to make it more if you want to use robots or other things as well. So I will not lie and say that this all came from my brain, because it did not. I search and find resources all over the place. You can actually click on that and it will link you to this Wakelet that has this wide variety of resources that I use when I'm coming up with ideas or looking for inspiration when working on this. So there's lots of stuff there, and I do add to that as I find new things. So here we are at the main event, and that is the curriculum. And if you click on this, it's going to take you to an unpaged Google Doc. I used to have this in a Google Sheet, but Google Sheets does not like when you want to hyperlink more than one thing in a cell. So I migrated it into this format, and the unpaged. So if it says something to you about it being unpaged, that's what it means. It's so that you can, you know, there aren't any page breaks or anything like that. So what I will kind of do is just kind of work through each grade level and just kind of show you like the sequence, and you'll notice that there's kind of a pattern in what you see from grade to grade. So so yeah, we'll start with kindergarten. So everything works down. It's labeled like K, kind of some sort of lesson title, and then it'll have a number after it that tells you like which lesson it is in sequence. So the main lesson slides are always at the top, and then it'll pull you into the slide deck. So I am not a person, I do not write out lesson plans. Anything that I add in here that you might need would be in the speaker notes. Okay, so if like I'll put links in there. In some of the lessons, it's more scripted, like here's some questions to ask and stuff like that. So there it always starts with a learning target. I have some videos. So for kindergarten, it's just a very basic intro to coding. We talk about algorithms. All vocabulary slides look similar. They all have the same icons as you go through the different grade levels. So if you see algorithm again, you're going to see the same icon and so on. And then there are some activities for practice. So whether you practice as, I practice this as a whole group, we do it together. Sometimes I'll just have kids point like which direction they want, or you could give them arrows to hold up if you wanted to, or however. So This is adapted from Code.org's Happy Maps. If you've done that activity before, I just changed it to look different. And then down here in the slide notes, but also I have it up here in this. It will take you, there's a Jamboard version, and you will need to make a copy. I had somebody email me for access. I'm not going to I won't give you editing access, but you can make a copy of anything that you want to. So in order to be able to move the arrows, you do have to make a copy, just to, in case, I'm sure you probably all know that, but just as a little friendly reminder. And then if you think kids would prefer having like a printable where you actually cut and paste, I have that as well. So this is that, and then you can cut out the arrows and the kids can paste them in to create the algorithm. So for each lesson, I try to have options for how you can do it. So you can either do it whole group, you can do it Jamboard. Like I said, I work with online students, so cut and paste does not work for me. So I actually created that Jamboard. I put it into Whiteboard Chat, if you're familiar with that app, and it allows the kids to move and manipulate things, and then I can see them working all at once. But I don't have a way for currently sharing my Whiteboard Chat files because I don't have an upgraded account yet. So I'm just working with what I've got. Okay, so then we move down to the second lesson, which incorporates literature. You could do this with any book that you wanted to. All books have sequence, so we do some review. We talk about everyday algorithms, so things that you do in a day, whether it's your school schedule, how you get ready for school, how you're following step-by-step instructions to do something in your day. And then we compare it to sequence, like in a story. And that brings us to you're going on a bear hunt. There's lots of books out there that could lend themselves to this. The Very Hungry Caterpillar is one I've also seen that's, very step-by-step. Of course, you'd have to make your own resources if you want to do something different. So then I have, again, some options for kids to complete the activity. So this could be, you could print it out, they could draw on it. Here's another version of that. Takes you to Jamboard. Same thing. These I have multiple stacked there, so it'll keep, there's plenty of arrows so they can keep pulling those and doing it that way. Something I do in Jamboard too is like if you have it and you want to work in the whole class, like I just make a slide, just duplicate the slide for every kid and then assign them to a slide. I know that's time consuming, but sometimes for ease, I will put their name on the slide so they know exactly which one is theirs. But if you have kids that can handle like, oh, I'm slide number 1, like I'm number 1, so I'll go to number 1, or I'm number 15 or whatever. And then down below that, I did make some larger graphics. So if you wanted to do something like this with robots or something like that, you could print those out and have kids follow the sequence using physical computing. And then the last one is when we kind of get to moving to a computer. My district is 1-to-1 Chromebooks. So everything that I use with kids has to function on a Chromebook. We don't have iPads. We don't have other devices that they can easily access at every building. So everything is Chromebook compatible. We review a little bit. There's a story here that just has a loose, robots, computer science. And then we move into doing algorithms together using an online component. I used to use, what was it? The little robot, I can't think of what it was, but it doesn't work on Chromebooks anymore. So that's there. And then I created a choice board that is very kindergarten, first grade friendly. This is all drag and drop stuff. So everything in this choice board is arrows. There's no text, so they don't have to read like move forward. And if you click on that, it opens it like this. But the way I like to share it for kids is I'll actually change the end after the slash to preview, and then it puts it in preview mode, and they can't like click on anything else around it. But then they can just click onto the links and it will take them to the coding activity. And that's how, there's a couple other choice boards that you'll see for the different grade levels, but this one is strictly no text, only arrows, pretty like drag and drop. So if you're getting kids used to that method, yeah, so that's that. I know I'm talking a lot at you. Do I need to pause for questions, or are we going to do a Q&A like later if you want to?
Yeah, let's do a quick check, see if there's any questions on what you've shared so far. Any thoughts, questions, or things that she shared so far that you want her to go into more detail on, or just connections to what you're doing, or any of that kind of stuff? I know that's a lot of processing, I know at this point, so there's lots of things to click on and explore, but yeah, go ahead.
Is this something that you go into the classroom and teach with the classroom teacher, or is this during library time?
I do this during library time. So this is, like I said, I see every class once a week for 25 to 30 minutes. So depending on how your class is, I can usually get through a lesson, one of these lessons in that time period. You know, we all know that with kindergarten, anything can happen, but yeah, so that's kind of, they all range in that like 25 to 30 minute is my hope that you can get through. Sometimes they might be a little heavier, and they could span more time than that. So that you'll notice that most have about 4 weeks worth of lessons. Most librarians in my district, we typically teach computer science from like around Thanksgiving break to winter break, because it coincides with Computer Science Education Week, and it's kind of a great way to like get through those 4 weeks between break and winter break. So that's when most teach it, but it kind of is around, some people start after break as well. So yeah, 4 to 5 weeks for most of these is kind of the path that most of us follow.
Okay, that's what I was saying.
That's perfect. I appreciate you sharing that. Other questions? I know as you were sharing, I think there's a lot of head nods that I think they're in the same boat as you with all the things you've talked about. Not much time, and definitely the winter vibes, especially now with indoor research.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah.
Login?
Go ahead.
Login like with a generic login, or is it all of her kindergartners are logging in independently?
For like logging into what?
To get logged
like
in,
their computers?
access your slides, which are beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I would spend probably 15 minutes though if there's an independent login. How do you, or is it a generic login that your kindergartners are using?
Well, all of my students, so like to get onto their computers, we have, they used to have Clever, now they use ClassLink badges, so they badge in to their computer. And then I would link something like this on like their Clever page, and then they know to go to my Clever page, and then they click on the link and it opens. Is how they would access that.
So is that
like the
a
choice
QR
board, if you're talking about that?
Is that a QR code
Yeah.
for your camera, and that's generated by your tech department?
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, we just switched at the end of last year, the last 4 days of, actually right after the last day of school, they decided to switch over to ClassLink badges. Really good timing for any problems. But we were Clever badge enabled, all of our Chromebooks were, but they moved over to ClassLink. So yeah, it looks like a QR code, and then the kids, their computer opens up to a camera and they scan it and it logs them in.
They can still see the letter or number.
I know that's not like everybody's option. Before I had something like that, we did have, like my district had a shared login. And when I had kindergarten, like that's typically what I would do, is just log all the computers into a shared login. But I was also in like a lab setting. We weren't one-to-one at that point. But yeah, just posting it, and you could even post the link on, like if you're a Seesaw using school, you could post the link to the choice board in there. Something like that.
obviously.
Any other questions or wonderings at this point? Anything you want to see in particular? As you're kind of scanning through stuff and clicking on stuff.
I don't have to show you every single slide. I can just kind of talk through each of the grade levels and kind of like the thought process behind each one. And then, because I know we don't have hours of time. But I'll just kind of go through that. So first grade focuses on the book Hello Ruby. This book is available through Iowa AEA on Mac and Via. There's like a 20 copy ebook on there. So I've left these in here. This is me reading, which I know is probably not copyright friendly, and kids probably want to hear you read anyway. So I use these slides, so I just left them in because I use them with my students. But you can go to, everybody has access to Mac and Via through this Iowa AEA, and Hello Ruby is on there. So yeah, so these work through the different chapters of that. So each one you'll see is kind of either 3 or 2 chapters. And then within those chapters, there's some focus, whether it's on algorithms, loops, events, the vocabulary it will tell you, and then conditionals kind of get covered. And again, there's multiple versions of each activity. So if you want to do it, if time and having kids do it individually is not in your time frame, do it together as a class. Like that can, and you can do it on the Jamboard. You can just do it on the slides, whatever works best for you. Second grade starts with a review of Ruby. It's her other book called Journey Inside a Computer. This I put in, this is new to my lessons for this year, because as I was going through the standards, there was kind of I'm looking for gaps of things that we're not covering. So talking about, and I actually just updated this yesterday, so I'm gonna add that vocabulary on there as well. Icons, this is what happens when I start looking at things, is that I'm like, oh, I need to change that. And then I start going down the rabbit hole. So there is so just some information about like what is a computer, and it's another Hello Ruby activity. And it's based on the book Journey Inside a Computer. I would say you could read, I found a read aloud online that's about 9 to 10 minutes. So that one I would say is probably more of like a whole class discussion, or you could just read the first couple chapters of the book too. Then we get into the next 2 lessons are based on the How to Code a Sandcastle and How to Code a Roller Coaster books by Josh Funk. And so I just created lessons out of those, and then use some of the vocabulary that you find in those books. And there are, again, some activities to go with it. There's kind of a draw arrows to get Pascal through the sequence to build the roller coaster, or to build the sandcastle, excuse me. And then there's some vocabulary in there. And I think I added in just yesterday, a very simple like debugging example. So bugging and debugging is one of the standards. So like here it's like find the bug and fix it. Patterns are a great way to do that for young kids, is just find the mistake in the pattern and fix it. This last one, I did some sketchnoting with, it's very basic. So it's just a review of some of the vocab that we did, and then they draw little pictures to symbolize each of those. There's little videos of me like stop motion drawing those. And then here's another one of those choice boards. And this one has 2 slides. So I tried to kind of put it into level 1 and level 2. So obviously, they're a little bit more difficult. Or not really that. I mean, you know what I mean. So 2 levels there. So that's kind of something that I let them go do. You could also just let them choose hour of code, but I find that there's a lot of stuff on there that young kids don't have any idea how to do it. So I try to give them choice, but narrow it down so they're not like having a free for all and like, oh, Minecraft. And then they're like, I don't know how to do this. So not that some can't figure it out, but many can't. Third grade has kind of an ocean theme. It starts with an unplugged ocean cleanup activity. Some of these are what someone referred to once as replugged. So I have a Jamboard version as well. So it's not like you're truly coding, but you're like dragging and dropping little icons to clean up the ocean. Then we do beach cleanup, which is through Codeable. My kids access Codeable through Clever. Clever, it's free up to a certain point on there. And you can set up classes and they can get through plenty of Codeable without me having to pay any money for it. And I don't. So the beach cleanup is a Codeable activity. Then a couple years ago, Codeorg released AI for Oceans. It's an activity. So we talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. And this one you'll see as they go up, I try to include some real world, more real world tie-ins. And if I could find it, I'd like to add in kids doing computer science. So there's some videos there. And then here's a girl that created this robot that would clean up underwater, and she puts it down in her pool. And then here's kind of this ocean cleanup project so they can see some of that. And then there's the AI for Oceans activity that they could do on their computer. And then the last is I have a read aloud on there. And then here's the 3rd through 6th grade choice board. And I had this listed by grades at one point, but then I just changed it to levels. So they just kind of get, and there are some repeats on different ones, but you'll notice next to them, they say whether they're block or text, just so that if kids want to start dabbling in some actual text coding, I put options like that on there. And then it even has just linking to the hour of code activities. And so that might be like the last week before break, we let them have like, just choose an hour of code activity for the day and have fun. Okay, 4th grade, you're going to notice. So it works through this lesson called Welcome to CS First. So it's, you do have to set up courses in Google CS First, which is much, much easier than it used to be. It used to be the biggest pain ever, but now if you use Google Classroom, you can set those up pretty easily. My kids, I just have them type in the class code. All my kids do have Google accounts though through with their Chromebooks and everything. So that makes it pretty easy. This is a lesson that's in beta for CS First, but the way it's set up is amazing. Like it has all these it's very structured, and it has a little window that pops up at the bottom where it tells the kids the directions. I can actually, I like it better than some of the other ones because it is so, it's a lot more guided, and they have it out there and they want feedback on it. And I hope that as they get feedback that they use this method on their other lessons, because if it'll load, I don't know if it'll load, but it's just really nice because like even in the directions, if it has like a pink underline, they can click it and it will go show them like what in Scratch that they have to click on. So it's very guided. And if you haven't used CS First, the Scratch that you're using is integrated into CS First. So it's kind of like an internal version. So you get all the Scratch stuff without having to worry about them making another account. So if they have a Scratch account, great, they can go do Scratch on their own, but this is very enclosed and yeah. So sorry, it's not loading for whatever reason, but this works through that lesson. And I tried to kind of walk you through it in the slides so that you can just follow along. And then down here is like the instructions for setting up a class, where you would type in your class code, and then it just kind of works through as you go through. And this talks about like your workspace and all of the things. So, oh, and this I can kind of show you on here. So like at the bottom of this window right here, this pops up at the bottom and they can have it go up and down, and then it gives them directions right there on the screen, and then they can collapse it, and it's really helpful. Underneath this, you're going to see microbit lessons, and I include, my district is doing a little bit of a pilot. So we're looking at ways to incorporate computer science into existing science units that are already being taught. So the energy unit is taught in 4th grade, and I'm in Grantwood AEA, so we had a team of AEA people and science teachers, and there's some teachers piloting this, and they are incorporating an actual microbit into that energy unit lesson. And as the librarian and the librarians in those pilot schools, we just kind of do like an intro to the microbit and get it connected to the Chromebook. So that's what these lessons are. But the great thing about that is that MakeCode it has an emulator. So even if you don't have actual physical microbits, makecode.microbit.org, they have all these activities and they can do it on an emulator on the screen. So not exactly the same, but they wouldn't have to go through this setup process. But that's what those lessons are, is and I have the emulator lesson on there as well. So if you just wanted to have them do that, you could. So that's what those are. 5th grade, I use MakeCode as well. This one uses it's kind of the video game. It looks like an old Game Boy, kind of. They don't use the actual device, they just use the emulator. And there's several different activities, but the one I chose was the Save the Forest one. And so they kind of work through the steps of that. And then you'll see down kind of that last day is kind of like a do choice board, share your work, share your game with other people. And then the last is 6th grade. So we currently are K6 in our elementary. We are moving to a middle school model in a couple of years. But I found this really cool video series on TED Ed that's called Think Like a Coder. And it's 10 episodes. They range from like 5 minutes to 10 minutes, depending on the episode. So I will say, like, when you get down to the bottom, there are like 4. I never get through this in 4 weeks. So sometimes I'll like pick it up after break and show them the rest. Being an online teacher, I have put these videos into EdPuzzle just to kind of add a interactive piece for my students. So if you use EdPuzzle, it just pops, like every so often it pauses and there might be a question or a note or something in the video just to kind of check for understanding and make sure that they're actually paying attention. Otherwise, you can do it as a class. So in each one, you'll see the episodes that are there, and then each episode kind of has different concepts that it covers. So then we try to talk about those concepts that are covered. So loops and conditionals are in the first 2. And then I have at the end, I have a choice board that just focuses on those skills. So the top row is loops activities and the bottom row is conditional activities for those students that they could go and then practice those. And this down here is the slide that would just take you to just that board, and then you could share that with the students. And there's another one like that with variables, and then we get into the choice board. And this last one goes into some definitely more advanced topics, so we don't really go a lot. We don't really talk about permutations and the big O notation, but they do talk about those, so I listed them there for you guys. This 6th grade is kind of, I've gone back and forth about, kind of adding in lessons that are a little more not focused on the videos and just focused on others. But then I haven't completed those yet, and I won't be teaching. Well, I might not be teaching 6th grade in the future. So it's also, do I want to spend time creating those if I'm never going to use them? So So at the bottom are just some resources for you guys. So it's just kind of links to the different standards and alignments that go with some of the resources I used for these. I will say you probably are noticing a lack of code.org in here. And the only reason for that is I have it in some of those choice boards. All the choice boards link to pretty much code.org activities for the most part. In my district, I was seeing a lot of teachers starting to use code.org for like a choice time or like part of choice boards or part of rotation time as like an option for kids. So I was having a lot of kids coming and being like, I've already done this. And they were giving me like this kickback. So I kind of didn't just want to like have these go and be like, all right, get on this course and just have at it. My district is having all the librarians go through code.org fundamentals training, and something that's on my like thinking about list for the future is like really picking and choosing from some of the code.org lessons and having them be explicitly taught, because while I think the courses are great if you're just letting kids get on there and go, are they actually learning the coding concepts, which is one of the downsides I think to teachers just letting kids get on there, is it's like they just think they're playing a game and they don't realize that they're actually doing computer science in some way. So continuing to add the CS Iowa core standards, you'll notice at the end of most of the slide decks I've listed the standards that are covered. I just created this checklist yesterday, so it is not done. And I'm checking off what is covered in each grade level with those particular lessons. And I only got up to partway through second grade, so that's not complete. And then I'm continuing to build out digital citizenship. So if you have looked through the computer science standards, you're going to notice that it's not just coding, it's not just computer science. There's the digital ethics, there's cybersecurity stuff that's on there, which many of us teach already. And that was also kind of another thing, is when these computer science standards were coming out, I'm like, we're already doing that. Like, we're already like, check. The librarians are already teaching those things. And so I kind of went through and crosswalked what we were already doing. And I sent that to our current computer science coordinator in the district. And they're like, oh. And so then that kind of like got us more into the conversation of like, hey, every kid's getting this because every kid has library in elementary. So you're welcome for getting you to like cover the standards that you need to. But you'll notice I have this links to, I'm starting to add in any more of the digital citizenship side of things, those lessons that are in here. This one I had created, and now to show you how like OCD I am about things looking a certain way. If you scroll down, you'll notice that I'm like starting to switch it over to the other, my other theme. So yeah, I don't expect people to be like that, but yeah, so that's kind of the curriculum in a really fast nutshell. Again, another next step is the physical computing. A lot of that you can just kind of tie in how you see fit, but like I said before, I currently work with online students, so I've found some ways to do that, like with, you know, a camera and like different things, but in-person students all have access to different things. So yeah, that's what I got.
Well, first, we can't thank you enough for sharing. I don't know how you figured out how to squeeze 40 hours into a 24-hour day to put this together, because it's bonkers. I don't know that you sleep. But I think
my favorite question I got from another librarian is like, did you get paid to do that? I'm like, no.
But thank
No.
you.
In love, I guess. I got paid in the happy feedback from people. That's what matters. So I just hope it's helpful. Of course, like any of it, you can, you know, make a copy and modify, like use what you want, use what you don't want, like get rid of the stuff that's not right for your setting. Yeah. So, and I know even within my district, which we, if you're familiar, we're doing HRS. And so it will get a little more like this is what everybody is doing. But even now with this, there are still some librarians who teach things in ways that are just, they want to do it a different way. And I'm not their boss, so I'm not going to tell them to do it my way. And my way might not be the best way for everybody. So my hope is that this is at least a starting point.
Yeah, well, it's beyond a starting point. It's pretty well detailed. So as she had a chance to kind of go through those grade levels, and I know there was some conversation at the tables, are there any insights or wonderings or further questions? So, I mean, I know I have some other things to share. They're not anywhere near as awesome as this. I want to make sure we got some time for networking, but I also want to make sure you get a chance to converse and ask questions. While we have her here, you've got a chance to kind of click through that. At least you get to see a process. You get to see kind of how things could be framed. I think you're seeing an example that a lot of you face. Very little time with kids, not just in a block of time, but in the scope of sequence of a year and all the other things you have to do in terms of a way in which it could be done. And so any questions for her while you have creator behind just one example, which is pretty well laid out.
Is when you laid out your curriculum, that's what you do for computer science for an entire year. And then you're also teaching your library standards on top of that, correct?
Yes. Yeah, so like I was saying, we're reworking our priority standards right now. That's part of our HRS process. So a lot of the like digital citizenship and like the cybersecurity, some of those things are already tied into our computer or our library standards, excuse me. Coding is at this point, or like leading up till now, was kind of like a bonus, but since it's required and by the state, but also my district is, the expectation is kind of now that this has already been created, that librarians are covering more of the computer science, and then the classroom teachers are going to cover more of the computational thinking side of things. So if you go through the standards, you'll notice a lot of that stuff is missing from the computational thinking side of things. So they're trying to find ways to incorporate more of that into the general ed classroom. But yeah, so that's why this is only like 4 to 5 weeks. And then, yeah, we teach our other standards outside of that time.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
So how are you doing library then? If you have 30 minutes, 23 or whatever it was, how are you doing library and computer science at the same time?
Are you asking like, so are you asking about like checkout and stuff like that with it, or
Well, reading,
or just
like reading the story, developing the love of reading, all the things.
yeah, so that might, yep. So some weeks I don't read. And that's why I try to tie in literature when I can, but it's not always there. And that's why this doesn't take up my whole year. So typically in my school district, you have library class and it's just library class. Checkout time is separate. So kids come back for a separate checkout time. In some buildings, they can work their schedule where they have maybe 45 minutes of time and then they just tack on the checkout time. So like the checkout and the, like if I wanted to book talk or doing that, like some of that can be done during their checkout time, or like it's just a balance. So like we might start out the year, we might focus on literature for a little while, and then we might focus on our inquiry and information literacy skills, and then we might do coding, and then we'll go back to literature. So it's just kind of finding the balance.
You don't necessarily do computer science every week.
No, I would say it's like a unit, if you want to look at it that way. Like I teach these lessons in sequence at one point in the year. And then if you don't look at like some of those digital citizenship side of things, like those get sprinkled. I usually don't like teach those all at once. I might do like one the beginning of the year, talking about like, you know, being safe online and things like as we're getting on and using our Chromebooks, and then we'll transition to something else. So yeah, no, I do not teach it every week.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
no way. There's no way for us to do that because like I said, we only see them once a week. So
You mentioned earlier,
that's kind of,
it's like what, Thanksgiving to winter break, kind of that.
yeah.
working time
Yep.
really is-
Yeah.
Great questions. Any other questions for her?
I also know that's not everybody's reality. I know that Iowa City is lucky to have a librarian in every building, at least a half-time librarian, which I know is not the case for many, especially small districts. My own kids go to a school district where there's one librarian for the whole K-12. And I know what she's doing for computer sciences is she's trying to do it in 5th grade, and she's doing it in like 2nd grade because there's a lower elementary and upper elementary. So like this is not, it might not be a reality for everybody. You might just have to focus on one grade level and that will satisfy the requirement. So if it doesn't work for you, I totally get it. I know that this like seeing kids once a week is not everybody's reality.
Well, awesome. Well, can we give Jenahlee a thank you, a round of applause for?
You're welcome. And please email me if you have questions. I feel like links are working. Most of my peers have gone through these lessons over the, you know, last several weeks. So most of them have let me know if anything's not working or not linking. And then I try to update, you know, Hour of Code comes out with new stuff every year. So I try to go in and update things and add things. And like I said, I was just in there yesterday and I was like, oh, I'm going to add in, this is kind of a missing gap. So I'm going to add in some stuff. So stuff's always changing.
We appreciate your time and your dedication. It's pretty phenomenal what you've put
You're welcome.
together. It's not just something you whip up real quick. So it's an incredible resource, and I think it's just an awesome opportunity for people to start to wrap their head around this. A lot of people in this room have that expectation on the plate to figure it out. So I can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
You're more than
Yeah.
welcome to hang out here. We're gonna transition
Okay.
to